The Australian Society of Soil Science, Riverina branch. Celebrating 50 years. Field trips have been an important activity for our branch. This photo was taken in 1961 at John Loveday's experimental plots in Collyambly. Our field trip in 1975. In the 1970s, the branch was concerned that there was a lack of awareness of published papers on Riverina soils. It arranged for the CSIRO Division of Irrigation Research to compile this bibliography. Branch members inspecting a field experiment studying rice stubble disorder at Griffith in 1976. The Riverina branch hosted the Federal Council from 1976 to 1978. Ian Kelly was editor of Soils News and in his first editorial said that the branch was the youngest, the smallest with 41 members and possibly the most dispersed of all branches. The branch has organised a number of symposia to bring together research on specific topics. The first was on the hydrogeology of the Riverine Plain and was held at Griffith in 1978. CSIR Bulletin 118, a soil survey of the horticultural soils of the MIA, was reprinted by CSIRO at the request of our branch. It was reprinted as Bulletin 289. It was edited to align the soils described with the concept of prior streams and created controversy with an original author. Peter Bacon outlining his research measuring nitrogen transformations in a rice crop. New South Wales, Canberra and Riverina branches held regular tri-branch conferences. We hosted a meeting at Yanco in 1983 and these photos were taken on the field trip. In 1983, the Deniliquin Group organised a visit to the Wakul Evaporation Basin. Inspecting high water tables and salinity at Corby Hill near Leeton. A symposium on root zone limitations to crop production on clay soils was held at Griffith in 1984. Nitrogen cycling in temperate agricultural systems was the subject of a symposium held at Wagga in 1986. A field trip in 1990. A conference on management of soil salinity was organised and held at Albury in 1990. A very successful field trip to the Mungo National Park occurred in 1991. Aboriginals settled here over 40,000 years ago and it is internationally renowned. We were the first group to stay in the new Mungo Lodge. The lunette on the northeast side of the old lake is highly eroded. At sunset, the colours produced were spectacular. The next morning we examined more closely the lunette and active sandhills. Many of us will always remember seeing the bones of a hairy-nosed wombat preserved possibly for 50,000 years in the red soil. On the way to Mungo we stopped at Anderson's Corner and inspected large equipment used to grow maize for silage for their cattle feedlot. On the return trip we visited Low Bidgie wetlands where irrigated organic cereals are grown. We also inspected Martin Maynard's property to see his row crop enterprise. Ray Isbell presented a special 3-day program in 1993. He explained his new soil classification system in seminars and field trips at Leeton, Deniliquin and Wagga. In 1993, the Griffith meeting visited a number of properties demonstrating interesting aspects of irrigated agriculture. A windmill being used to lower water tables, a horticultural property growing Fuji pears, a tomato crop on Richard Stott's property, a maize crop showing poor growth on a cut area. During the meeting, a barbecue lunch was enjoyed by members. Inspecting gherkins and other crops being grown with berry drip irrigation beneath beds at Pole Foods Farm at Bannerambah. One of the more unusual field trips was organised by Peter Bacon to the Barmah State Forest. He was then working with New South Wales State Forests and was measuring the water balance in the River Red Gum Forest. Rod Fisher explained the soil water measurements being made at the Managing Acid Soils Through Efficient Rotation experiment at Book Book. Later in 1994, we visited the forestry effluent treatment site at Forest Hill. Important soils in the riverine landscape were studied in 1995. Mark Stannard, Per Gunn, Tony Dare Edwards and Ken Page assisted in their description. Sites visited included this cypress pine woodland, Gilgai soils in Collyambly, a sand pit in a prior stream at Gunbar, a kaolin pit at Gunbar, mallee soils at Gulgowie, and a red earth soil also near Gulgowie. Issues associated with the irrigation and drainage of horticultural soils was discussed in 1995 at a McWilliam vineyard. At the Wagga meeting in 1996, the then President, John Thompson, presented the first student prize to Tony Swan, an ex-total student at CSU. Later in the day, Mark Conyers described how contour banks in a nature reserve at Wagga was contributing to salinity problems in a residential area. Phil Everbach described the hydrology of Houlihan's Creek at the September meeting. In 2001, a conference on electromagnetic techniques for agricultural resource management was held at the Yanco Agricultural Research Institute. In 2006, on our second visit to Mungo National Park, a ranger conducted us on a tour of the area. An interpretive centre provided an excellent introduction to the megafauna, extensive archaeology, and cultural significance of the park. We went on a 70-kilometre tour around the Lunet, known as the Walls of China. First stop was an inspection of the lunette. We saw an aboriginal midden exposed by erosion of the lunette. At the Rosewood site there were deep erosion gullies in the lunette. We climbed a sand hill that was over 40 metres high and experienced the strong wind at the top. We visited an area where Aboriginals made tools from rock. At dusk, we returned to the lunette to see the changing colours in the landscape. And then walked to the bus and saw a spectacular sunset. The branch funded a studentship that led to the publication in 2008 of the soils of the Murrumbidgee, Coleambally and Murray irrigation areas. It brought together all published information on the physical and chemical properties of these soils. At the 2009 Wagga meeting, the field trip examined features of the Murrumbidgee floodplain, including a gravel pit and sand hill. A biennial meeting was held at Yanco in 2010, and participants inspected a trial measuring gaseous losses from a rice field. The branch held a 50th anniversary field trip to Lake Riverina in September 2011. The characteristics of the lunette and surrounding soils were studied, and its relationship to the Mungo lunettes discussed. A 50th anniversary dinner was held after the field trip. Current and past members enjoyed the opportunity to reminisce on the past activities of the branch. The Riverina branch of the Australian Society of Soil Science has allowed soil scientists to meet and share information for 50 years. May it continue to serve soil scientists into the future.